Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Brews with Brian, a craft beer review podcast. Now, craft beer is beer that is brewed in smaller breweries, not these big corporate machine breweries that we're all aware of. Craft beer takes time and patience, and the people that brew this stuff actually care about the product they are delivering to us. On this week's show, it's going to be a special best of episode, so sit back and enjoy some of the best beer I've had. But let's kick this show off. And first up on today's show, we have KBS Espresso. Of course, KBS stands for Kentucky Breakfast Stout. It's from Founders Brewing Company out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And KBS Espresso has an ABV of 12%, and it's a one-off, so you better get this thing while it's out, because it's not coming back. The description from the website says, KBS gets its coffee fix in the very first variant to come from our beloved bourbon barrel-aged stout. Yes, KBS may already be brewed with coffee, but it gets some extra oomph when it's added on espresso beans after being removed from barrels. The result is a fresh and snappy coffee twist on our classic barrel-aged beer. Who says you can't start your day with a barrel-aged stout? This beer pours absolutely black as night with nearly 4 fingers of light mocha head that builds up like a dusty cloud and holds its place for ages before eventually settling down to a film with a massive collar and very tenacious lacing. And on the aroma, I can only think of 2 words: coffee bomb. They took espresso and aged it in the bourbon barrels and then finished it on a stout beer. Deep, full, roasty coffee with tons of nutty impressions, pecans, hazelnut, chocolate syrup, bourbon barrel, booze, vanilla, brown sugar, caramel, toffee, molasses, and tons of fresh ground coffee. And this has just got an amazing aroma. Tasting the beer, you get a lot of roasty coffee first, with restrained sweetness. It's certainly sweet and malty, but it's a mere sliver of sweetness that CBS has. And from my memory, the regular KBS was also a bit sweeter. Big dark malt sets the foundation immediately with some blackened roast quality. Coffee roast, baker's chocolate, and barrel char play supporting roles as well, setting the overall tone for this beer. Past the whole bombardment of all things dark, there are lighter notes of molasses, burnt toffee, brown sugar, sweetened dark chocolate, and vanilla to add nuance and gradient layers. After this, we swallow, and the first thing to surface is a beautiful, sweet, oaky bourbon presence. At this point, we're essentially into the finish, where a bunch of vanilla shows up, as well as toasted oak and caramel, before things take a turn back in the direction of roasty. Bitter cacao, fresh dark espresso, roast coffee grounds, black and charred malt, and barrel char all serve to establish a big, bold, roasty, charry, dark finish with multiple sources of bitterness. Coffee and blackened malt lingers on and on. This beer is certainly full-bodied and rich, with a typical barrel-aged stout slickness to it, but it's far from fudgy or viscous. It doesn't put up a fight like most high ABV barrel-aged dark beers. If you chew it a bit, it does get slightly thick, but it's mostly due to the fine effervescence, which is low, naturally, but somewhat lively for the style. It's wet up front, wet in the middle, and semi-dry in the finish, with drying roast qualities. Some ABV heat in the swallow and throughout the palate. KBS Espresso is everything you expect it to be. It very much mirrors its namesake base beer, but is just stuffed to the brim with fresh roasted coffee. I normally prefer sweeter, thicker, fudgy barrel-aged ales, but I find that the coffee actually increases the overall drinkability of this one. And in this particular case, I also think that increased drinkability works in its favor. It is still one to sit down with and just sip, but the fact that it doesn't fight back in any ways makes the whole sipping experience that much more enjoyable. And Founders is one of my favorite breweries. I've preached on that this whole podcast series. So if you can find it, you gotta try them. Anything they make, it's killer, all of it. But overall, I'm gonna give KBS Espresso from Founders Brewing Company 5 stars. And the final beer on this week's show is 10W40 Horchata from Highwire Brewing out of Asheville, North Carolina. 10W40 Horchata has an ABV of 8% and a rotating availability. The description from the website says Imperial Stout brewed with vanilla, almond, cinnamon, lactose, and chocolate. This beer pours an opaque yet still clear, thick, viscous jet black in color with moderate amounts of fine, active, visible carbonation rising quickly along the edges of the glass, and a faint, dark, cola brown colored highlights. The beer has a 2-finger tall, dense, foamy, dark tan head that slowly reduces to a large patch of film, covering the entire surface of the beer and a thin ring at the edge of the glass. Significant amounts of lacing are there as well. The aroma is moderate to strong of roasted dark malts with light to moderate amounts of lactose sweetness and moderate aromas of dark chocolate, almond, vanilla, and cinnamon. Up front, there are slightly stronger than moderate flavors of roasted dark malts with light to moderate amounts of lactose sweetness. That is followed by moderate flavors of dark chocolate and just shy of moderate flavors of almond. Light flavors of vanilla and cinnamon, hints of earthy hops. There is a moderate amount of roasty bitterness which fades after a small amount of time, leaving light, lingering dark chocolate, almond, and cinnamon flavors. It's just shy of a full-bodied beer, just with moderate amounts of carbonation. Smooth with light hints of alcohol warming in the finish. It's a really enjoyable beer with relatively well-hidden alcohol. Very enjoyable with a really nice combination of flavors of dark chocolate, lactose, cinnamon, vanilla. Definitely, it reminds me of a horchata. It's flavorful and fun without being overly sweet, cinnamon heavy, or bitter. Again, this is another beer I had at the Von Brewski Beer Festival last week in Huntsville, and I am becoming a fan of Highwire Brewing out of Asheville, North Carolina. I've had a few of their things, and I've loved everything. The 10W40 Base Stout is fantastic, so you got to check out Highwire. Anything they have is great. But overall, I'm going to give 10W40 Horchata from Highwire Brewing 5 stars. And first up on today's show, we have Two Hearted Ale from Bell's Brewery out of Comstock, Michigan. Two Hearted Ale has an ABV of 7.5%, and it's available year-round. The description from the website says, brewed with 100% Centennial hops from the Pacific Northwest and named after the Two-Hearted River in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, this IPA is bursting with hop aromas ranging from pine to grapefruit, from massive hop additions in both the kettle and the fermenter. This beer is remarkably drinkable, as well as suited for adventures everywhere. Pouring this beer has a very attractive and rich orange, leaning towards copper hue, and it produces about 2 fingers of off-white colored head. Aromas of sweet caramel malts and heavy grapefruit pop out immediately, along with other citrusy aromas and some pine. While it isn't the most complex smelling IPA on the market, it does smell pretty good in that old school kind of way. It is way more aromatic than Hop Solution and Hop Slam, Tasting this beer, you get sweet caramel malts on the front end and meld together with a medium piney bitterness, which dries the whole beer out towards the back end. The finish is a pleasant mixture of sweet and bitter. This thing is really balanced, really well actually. As it warms up, I pick up additional notes of cooling mint, lemon, and slightly dank herbs. The mouthfeel is full-bodied without feeling too heavy. Two Hearted is not sought after or celebrated, but is one of the best go-to options in terms of what you get for the money. I love this IPA. I buy it almost at least once a month for sure. It's fantastic. You got to try this thing. You will not be disappointed, and it may be my favorite IPA. But overall, I'm giving Two Hearted Ale from Bell's Brewery 5 stars. And that's going to do it for this special best of episode. I hope all y'all enjoyed re-listening to some of the greatest beer that I've tried. Don't forget, you can check the show out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. So don't forget to like and share and tell all your friends about it, and maybe we can grow the show even more. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Brews with Brian, and we'll see you next time.